It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
So we're going through steps to help you make sure that you can reach your financial goals. Step 1 was understand where you are, do a net worth statement, start that today. Step 2 was develop a plan for how you're going to save, how you're going to invest. Step 3 is a big one, and I would say, Brian, of all of these, this is the one I think people probably skip through the most or skip over the most, and it sounds so simple, but it's so incredibly effective. Number 3 is actually write down your financial goals.
I think a lot of people skip this one, and you can tell by the majority of Americans struggle with just the basics.
Yep.
It's hard for them to go beyond basics, and I think a lot of it is because they're not putting any calories or horsepower, brain power, into what do I actually want to be? Mm-hmm. And it's hard to wake up that invisible hand in your brain to have the accountability if you're not putting these goals on paper, if you're not actually putting them into the computer, if you're not writing them down. If you're not doing that, you're actually dreaming. You have not created the step that actually turns that dream into a reality.
And what I think is great is these can be personal financial goals. These can be career goals. If you're a business owner, these can be business goals. You will be amazed at what will actually transpire inside of your mind when you write them down. We have lived this firsthand, Brian. You and I, we used to go to all these conferences. We said, hey, you ought to organize when you think about the customers that you serve or your ideal customer, your ideal client, or ideal patient, depending on what field you are. And you ought to think about categorizing. What does the perfect, ideal A client, customer, patient look like? Okay, what does the B look like? What does the C look like? So on and so forth. And when you start organizing and defining, okay, well, if this is what an A looks like, how many A customers do I actually serve? Or how many A clients do I work with? Or how many A patients do I see? And then how many B's and how many C's? You'll be amazed when you actually look at that and say, oh, wow, if this is who I want to be working with, or if this is who I want to be serving, or this is who I want to be interacting with, then I'm going to change the way I think about approaching the decisions that I make. Without writing it down and actually working through the exercise, it doesn't visually become real. When we did that, Brian, it changed the practice. It changed the whole business and the way that we operate.
It is amazing because when we did that first year, there was a lot of C clients. And it's just amazing just having an understanding of what our ideal client looked like, as well as it just started shaping the business in a different direction where when you looked back 2 years in the future, we had flipped it over. Now the majority of the clients were the A clients. C had gotten much smaller. And you're like, well, I'm not a business owner. I'm trying to save for retirement. Here's what I want you guys to know. Just like I said, write down and describe what the ideal client is and put the metrics to it. You could do the same thing to your financial life. You could say, what is the ideal retirement for me? What is the ideal career for me? Start actually writing down what you want to see achieve and then put some time limits on it. Say, hey, what do I want to accomplish in my 20s? What are the 3 things that I hope to have by here? I've shared with you guys that all through, I wanted to make $100,000 by the time I was 30. I wanted to have $1 million liquid by the time I was 40. Those are goals with actual numbers that you can assign to it. So it's not dreaming. It's actually something that's measurable. I encourage you to do the exact same thing we talked about we do for the business to do to your personal life and your personal financial life as well. Hey, personal life will work as well with your relationship goals, but definitely financial goals, you need to record where you want to be.
Yeah, I think it's so great. And you guys have heard this 1,000 times. If you've listened to any sort of business, coaching, growth stuff, you've heard this. But when you make goals, when you set goals, they should be SMART goals. Brian, you just hit a number of these. The goal should be specific. It should not be, hey, my goal is to save more money this year. That's not very specific. It should be, my goal is to hit a 25% savings rate. That is a specific goal. It should be measurable. Again, I just want to save more money. Well, I guess more technically measures over less, but I know if I'm hitting 25% or if I'm only hitting 15%. That's measurable. It should be something achievable. If you're saving 0% right now, I would hesitate to set the goal to save 80% this next year. That might not be realistic. It might not be achievable. R was the realistic. And then number 2, timely. Set a time frame over what you want to do. I love what you said, Brian. I want to make $100,000 by the time that I'm 30. That's a timeline. $1 million liquid by the time I'm 40. That's a timeline. Those are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're realistic, they're timely. They are SMART goals. So when you actually write your goals down, make sure you check them against this litmus test. Make sure that you make sure they actually do fall into these 5 categories.
And then I wanted to close out. I always tell everybody to put on your 3D glasses to make sure that you are respecting the 3Ds of all big decisions. Now, this is important because I remember when I started my first company, it was kind of scary. You didn't know. I mean, this was on a hope and a dream with a plan behind it. But I felt like just having a plan wasn't all that I needed. Yes, I had all the SMART goals in there, but I also wanted to know, I wanted to break it into 3 different scenarios. And here's the 3 we came up with. The first one, this is the dream plan. This is what you're really hoping. This is like, I'm going to be rich. This is the best case scenario. No matter what you're planning, this is the best case scenario.
And isn't this the one that's the easiest to do?
Oh, yeah,
this is the one that we all lay in bed thinking about it.
Yeah, this is the one that gets you excited. It's no different than, because you get, just like people get excited about buying lottery tickets, you get excited about investing, you get excited about, this is the one where you are daydreaming to a degree. But that's okay, because what I have found, if you do this right, you'll come back and look at the dream plan 10 years, 15 years in the future, because a lot of us think linear. We don't think exponentially. And true success is going to have exponential growth. So dream plan still might be understated, but it is the most fun to do. The more what you think is going to happen is what we call the down-to-earth plan. This is what you really think, okay, I love doing the dream part of the plan, but let's actually figure out what this thing is going to look like if I put pen to paper, if I open up an Excel spreadsheet or a Sheets with Google. How is this going to play out? Make sure you're putting that one in. And then the last one is the do-do plan. This is where it's really hit the fan. It's not gone well. And you need to do this on the front end because this lets you engineer, is this going to be devastating or is this something I can work myself through and recalibrate? You need to have those 3 plans in place before you make any huge life decision, especially financially, because this is what's going to let your body prepare both mentally, physically, as well as financially, so that you can, handle no matter what happens. You're an all-terrain vehicle if you do the 3Ds.
Here's what I love about the do-do plan, because it sounds so silly and it sounds so funny to say, but it makes the reality of the goals that we're setting so much more real. So I'm going to go back to the example. If my goal is to save 25%, that can be my dream goal for this year. My down-to-earth plan is, okay, maybe I don't hit 20%, maybe I hit 15%. But then I got to start thinking, okay, what if I botch this and I don't save anything? What are the implications of that? Well, that $6,500 that I didn't max out my Roth is not going to turn into $286,000 by the time I get to retirement. And then I might not be able to retire at 60 anymore. I might have to work longer. I might not be able to afford that house, to do that vacation, to go on that trip, to do the whatever thing it is. I think when you start defining it in those terms, it will give you a lot more staying power to make sure that you actually stick to the goals that you're setting.
Well, there's a reason. I mean, I think about all these action plans that the military does and others. Why do they stress themselves out? Why, when like if you're trying to become a Navy SEAL, they put you through when you're going through the BUDS program. They put you through literally the worst of the worst situations because they're trying to give some type of preparation to see, can you handle it? But also so that when you are in future situations, are you the type of person that can stay the course? And that's so important. That's exactly right. To make sure you do that third scenario, that worst scenario, so that you don't get off track.